Cool.
Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 857. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here. You know what we do after a Grand Prix. We always review them.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do, and tonight I'm going to do it again. But before doing it, I have to introduce my co-host. You know what that means.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, how you doing?
Actually, I'm doing kind of good, Todd, actually.
You should be, because this weekend, Paul, you couldn't stop winning this weekend. My gosh, you guys had 3 wins this weekend at SRO Indy. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we should have had 4, but, we'll take it, right? I bet.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, it was quite a weekend. It was
Hannah and Rihanna winning the race, huh?
They won both races, yeah, but they scored a pole at a third place in qualifying in the 2 races. The GT America, we do 2 races a weekend, and they won both of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, in 2 different ways. We the first one, Hannah got the pole and she led, and Rihanna jumped in and just kept the lead, and that was pretty easy. The second one, there was a big crash in turn 1. And Rihanna had to go to the overshoot and lost a lot of places, but it was the right move, and we'd actually talked about it before the race. Was like, let's be sure we don't hesitate. We take that offshoot road and make the best of it. And she did that. We dropped some places. She made up some pace, made up some time, and then Hannah jumped in, and the radio wasn't plugged in properly.
Oh,
and so Hannah had no idea where she was or what was going on. So she just passed as many people as she could. It was insane. And so we were in 6th place, I think, when she came out of the pits, and she just kept steamrolling people. It was so cool to watch. But she didn't realize she was in the lead. So even though she was in the lead, she was still passing people, like diving and dive bombing in beside people, and everyone like, no, you were in the lead 2 laps before the end. So that was exciting. And then Gray and Roman also. We got front row start, and Gray got pole, and they won the first race of the weekend and came 3rd in the second one.
that's
and
awesome.
If it wasn't for some back market damage, they would have won it too. But yeah, it was a great weekend. But it was there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes for all race teams, and we'd had some bad weekends, and we were like, we are darned if we are gonna make this a crappy end of the season. So we were doing engine changes, we were doing a lot of work to be ready in the short amount of time. Hannah and Rihanna had never even been to Indy before, and they got very limited time, but we made the most of it. Obviously the Aston Martin was a tremendous car there, so that was a good weapon to work with. So yeah, it was a great weekend. They got to kiss the bricks, and we got to leave Indy with some great points and memories, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. Hey, little insight, I was talking to Paul before he went to Indy, and he said, oh man, we got to get these girls to the top of the podium. We got to get this this program, man. We need wins. He went in there and secured 3 of them. That's great.
Yeah, it's nice when the plan works out, right?
Yeah, it's nice when a plan works out. Exactly. Oh my! But in the meantime, you were able to watch the amazing Grand Prix of Qatar, right?
That I was. Yes.
Okay. We're good.
Maybe not in real time, but I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. You watched it. Well, that's good, because we're going to talk about it. We're going to review it. Let's start off as we always do, the formation lap. Let's set the grid here and talk about the race in general and aggregate, and then we'll dive down into the teams and cover each team and driver as they finish. So right up front, Paul, I think the issue started on Friday when Pirelli noticed the length of time and speed the drivers were on the serrated curbs may produce a resonance through the tire that could compromise its construction, leading to delamination, which everyone listening would know that that's a very bad thing. So the first change that they did was to reprofile the corners by painting the white line or the track limits a little closer. I think it was like 80 centimeters in from the curb, in hopes that it would keep the cars off the curb for the amount of time that they were spinning on those curbs. It ended up reprofiling that. It led to like over 50 laps of deleted times
Yes,
during the race. And
that's what we love.
don't you love that? And I gotta be honest with you. What better way to spice up the show than to have complete tire talk and track limit talks and penalties all weekend long? That's the way you want to do it. What better way to make a Formula One race great? Then the second change, and they were dog whistling this on Saturday, they were going to inspect the tires after the sprint race, which was only 19 laps long. So they were going to inspect those tires. Then they came out and they said, okay, for the race itself, each set of tires, they put a limit on each set of tires of 18 laps. Now, this forced the teams into effectively at least a 3-stop strategy. Some, like George Russell, did 4 because he had to. But in it, pretty much at that point, once everyone knew everybody's on a 3-lap strategy, it neutralized any sort of strategy from the teams as far as what teams had advantages on limited tire wear, better tire sympathy, those kind of things. So that all went out the window.
Yeah. I mean, to a degree, though, right?
Yeah, it's not to say that there wasn't math involved. Of course, there was, because some of them had fresh sets, meaning they could go 18 laps on them, while others had used sets. And in the case where Lewis Hamilton, he was really limited on what he could do, on how many laps he could do on a set of tires. So yes, it wasn't like there wasn't any strategy. Of course there was, but not like you normally would have.
Right. And the thing is, the teams didn't know before the race that this was actually going to change. So their tire strategy, as we talked about at the last race, you set your tire strategy for the moment you pull out a pit lane for practice 1, right? What tires you can use, how much you can use them, and they so some teams would have way more of an advantage than others, obviously, going into the race without actually doing it on purpose, but kind of grandfathering into it because of that change of the rule.
Yeah. To that point, maybe they changed that rule so late in the day, or late in the weekend. For Lewis's case, maybe he had 4 laps on a set of tires. That means he could only go 14 laps, not 18.
Right. There's no way those teams would have done that if they had known that was going to be the rule going in. Right.
Right. They wouldn't have done that. And it did lead to small possible advantages, like it kind of reduced the under overcut options, the need to set the pace and manage your tires, manage your wear rate, your overall grip and performance. That's kind of gone out the window now. So it definitely changed the complexion of the race. This meant that for many of the drivers, they said that they were pushing pretty much flat out each stint. They're only going 18 laps, so they're running hardcore, flat out. Less laps on those tires, meaning that if you're going at that rate of knots and you're going at it hammer and tongs, you had much higher G forces, a lot of concentration, a lot of physical demand inside that cockpit. The trouble was that the temperatures were over 40 C, or well over 100 degrees in old money Fahrenheit, and the high humidity meant that the drivers really started to struggle. A lot of them struggling with heat stroke, severe dehydration, a couple of the drivers vomiting in their helmet. This was not a good situation. A lot of the cockpits overheating. Fernando Alonso having a lot of heat issues, not only inside the cockpit, but his seat. And we'll talk about that when we get to Aston Martin. So, would they have had these issues with dehydration and all that if they weren't running flat out every single stint? Would they have that kind of thing? Hard to say, but I think it added to the physicality to the race by running flat out every single stint in this unfavorable weather. Now, I got to say, Paul, there was a lot of people really hammering F1, Pirelli, the FIA over this thing. A lot of people commenting, it's like Indy 2005. Not really. Indy 2005 is a different deal. Only one tire manufacturer was having an issue, and you can't penalize Bridgestone when they weren't having an issue. So that was a different beast altogether. This reminded me more of like, you remember the year escapes me now, that Pirelli was trying to get really cute and outthink the engineers. They ended up bringing tires to the British Grand Prix that were blowing up and
Right.
decontaminating.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah.
that? That was a
Yeah.
problem, right?
That was a problem. Yeah.
Major problem. And this
Yeah. I
is
think.
more like that. But
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely is more like that. But yeah, the Indy thing, I don't think they would ever want to revisit that because that kind of killed Formula One in the US
yeah,
for a very long time, and I think they learned their lesson that
yeah,
way. Sometimes
yeah.
the rules aren't more important than the sport.
Yeah, and to
Um,
be fair, though, Paul, before I start beating F1 about the head and neck with a blunt object, it's not the only series where tires have had some issues, or heat. I mean, the reality of it, Paul, I got to think in your world, in WEC and IMSA,
yeah.
there's probably been times that Michelin said, yeah, I know you'd like to triple stint these or double stint these, but don't. All right,
Oh
the
no, that
tire.
absolutely happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of control by the tire manufacturer behind the scenes, not necessarily always, laid out to the fan base of a lot of parameters that you have to run with your
yeah,
camber, tire pressure, stint length, stint number
yeah.
that they dictate to you. But obviously, this one was kind of a throw it in at the last minute in the middle of an event, which with Formula One, it's always going to be a grandiose thing, right?
And in that case, then it's a perfect example, Paul, in your world in IMSA, where you're talking stent length, number of stents, how much air pressure you're putting, how much camber you're putting in those Michelins. They're gonna control that pretty tightly with you guys,
Oh,
and that's going to change track to track on how abrasive those tracks are with those Pirelli tires, right? So
Yeah.
it's just the fans. Two things. It didn't happen at the last minute. You guys know that going into a weekend.
Yeah.
And so you're going to, assemble your strategy accordingly. Whereas with this weekend, it was sort of last minute Sunday morning decision, right? That makes it complicated. And it was publicly, and it's not something we typically see in Formula One. So everybody was, gnashing teeth and ripping robes over this thing. And I want to be fair to F1. They wanted to get the show that's got to be safe. Those are the issues. Also, Paul, I think in your sport, maybe WEC, I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure you guys, if anyone's going to suffer on blistering hot days, it's going to be an enclosed sports car, right?
Yeah. 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 Well,
And the heat in those cockpits, do you guys have temperature monitors in there?
yeah.
Yeah.
You have a temperature monitor in there. They do come with AC because now they're sealed.
Yep.
It's not like a family AC, it's not
AC,
exactly ice cool,
Yeah.
it's just cooler.
Yeah.
And yeah, they have a monitor in there that if it exceeds that, it's basically breaking the rules. You can't allow your driver to be in those conditions for any length of time. So they
Correct.
tell the team to correct the situation.
Yeah. And so in that case, when you talk about the oppressive heat here in Formula One, it is kind of surprising that they don't have a temperature gauge inside that cockpit in Formula One. You would assume it's open air, so there's no reason to do that. But when you're racing in 110 degree Fahrenheit, 44
Well,
C,
yeah. Plus,
yeah,
these cars are so aerodynamic. They're pushing the air. They're
away.
not sending a bunch of air into the driver's helmet. That's the
Right.
last thing they do when they design a Formula One car,
Right.
right? They want the air to go to the rear wing, so the
Right.
driver's not getting anything.
That's
And
why
we
you
some of the
saw
drivers
George Russell holding his hand up, trying to deflect some air down the straight
trying to get
at
something
180
going,
miles
yeah.
an hour, trying to get some air into that cockpit, right?
Yeah. Now, didn't they have those gloves that gave you like
Biometrics.
biometrics?
Yeah.
Do they have those now?
I
Or
think
was
they
that an
do.
experiment they didn't stick
No,
with?
I think they do have those.
So wouldn't that
Yeah.
tell the people how hot the driver is
I
getting?
don't know if it would tell the
Or is it just a
body
heart rate
temperature.
thing?
Yeah, I think it
Okay.
was more heart rate and that kind of thing. I don't quote me on that, but I don't know
Yeah.
if it gives an accurate
Yeah. But
body
just
temperature.
going into the future, something like that for sure,
Yeah.
understanding the body heat of a driver and saying it can't be that way, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
Alonso was asking for ice bucket, in his car, but obviously
Yeah.
at that point the car would shut down, never start up again.
Yeah, right,
All the
right.
he's sitting on the electronics, that's why it's so bloody
Right.
hot.
Yeah, right. You wouldn't want to pour a bucket of water into a hybrid car with an ERS system, battery system right behind you. It's not a good thing. Yeah.
I get the need, but that would be a very, very bad
Yeah,
thing.
that'd be
But
very bad.
it's also funny, and it was the heat more than anything. But the drivers are always asking, they want a tire that they can push lap after lap
Yes.
after lap. This is what they got given, and then
Yeah.
they're like, "It's too much.
It's
But
too
obviously
much.
I
The
think
G forces.
yeah,
It was the heat.
the heat, and
Yeah.
having to literally push as hard as you can because it was a tight race up there, certainly between the McLaren people and
Yeah.
some of the other drivers. So no one was able to pace themselves and relax because they were in a safe spot. No one was safe the whole race except for maybe Max.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe Max was the only one that kind of managed to pace a little. But
Mhm.
even Oscar said it was like 57 quali laps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what that race
But
was
that's
like.
what they've always asked for. But yeah,
It
just
is,
the
but
heat
probably not at 110 degrees.
yeah,
Right?
probably not.
Fahrenheit.
Yeah,
44 C.
I've raced in over 100 degrees. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, I would imagine. It's
Not in a Formula One car, but you know,
Right.
it was bad enough, right? It was a
Yeah.
40-minute race, and they were driving
Right.
for 2 hours in a Formula One car. Quite a different thing.
You
but
weren't pulling 5Gs, but
There definitely was not. You know,
Yeah.
maybe 4.5.
4.5, four
Yeah,
and three
maybe.
quarters. Yeah, right. Right. But you know, it's pretty, and I'm sure all of us have been in oppressive heat and such. Well, I live in the Midwest, of course. Every summer, it's you go outside and you spot weld to the pavement. But when
Right.
you try to get air in there, and the superheated air is just no respite, no relief.
No,
right?
it sounds like a great idea, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, that didn't really help.
It's like, oh, that's hot and sandy. That's terrible, right? So yeah, it was very complicated situation. I'm trying to be as fair about it. Look, I could take my fairness hat off and say that Pirelli really should have mule cars. They run at these tracks ahead of time
Yeah.
to see if there's an issue. The onus is on them to provide a car that can run over the curb as designed.
Right.
Someone asked, why do they do these diamond curbs? And I don't think these curbs are that much different than the other curbs at the other tracks, to be fair.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to go to that track to understand that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way of, having a piece of whatever curb they're going to bring at each track and have them, at a test track more local because they're not going to be flying to Qatar to just do a run over a bunch of
Yeah,
curbs.
right.
But samples of those kind of curbs so that they should do some more diligent testing. I'm sure they've figured something out on their tire that they weren't aware of before, and that can catch them out. And they still got the race in. So
Yeah.
the worst
Yeah.
thing for me is the track limits thing. I just hate it. And I know Lewis said, well, these curbs are great. We don't even need track limits penalties because of these curbs. And in the end, they couldn't use the curbs. So track
Yeah.
limits became a big thing again.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
oh,
Right.
can't stand it, man.
I can't stand it. I absolutely hate it. The track limit
Yeah.
thing is just killing me.
Yeah.
And everybody's, it was. I'm not picking on anybody, but if you're one of the people on social media that's taking a still frame from a video and showing, 6 inches or whatever, I was saying, well, hey, look, you should just turn more. Yeah, you're going 100 plus on miles an hour in a car you can't see squat. You can't see where your front wheel is. You
cannot. You cannot.
And guys, be realistic about this. These drivers are some of the best in the world. Lewis was wide. Sergio Perez. Max, I'm sure, was over. Charles Leclerc. And these are some of the best drivers in the world. And
Yep.
just to say simply, he had about 6 inches. He should have just turned. It doesn't work like that at speed.
Right. And plus, the conditions change in the corners every minute, so you could go in there at the same speed and the same angle, but it doesn't mean you're going to come out of it the same speed and the same angle.
Right.
Things change. Tire deg.
Yeah.
Something's on the track.
Balance of the car.
Yeah, all kinds of things. Yeah, fuel going out, balance of the car for
Mhm.
sure. Everything changes. I feel there should be some kind of allotment for allowing drivers to make a mistake every now and again without getting track limits. The only thing worse than a track limits penalty is a track limits replay in slow-mo. Jesus, please, people, stop. This is not exciting. I do not want to. It's like watching a car park. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, do not show me that. I don't want to see that. If you've got to use the track limits, just say you got track limits. But I do not need to see a replay.
I don't need to see
and
the
then,
track limit
and then
violation.
a 5-minute diatribe with Karun about whether he did or he didn't.
I know.
I mean, how many times they're like, well, I think he did. Well, I'm not sure. I think maybe.
Yeah,
It's like,
maybe.
stop talking about it. Jeez.
Oh my gosh, just stop. And they kept showing that every track. Well, there was over 50 laps of deleted times, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 50 replays of them showing someone slightly go over the white line. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. That's not excitement, you know?
Yeah, it's like, hey, you can show me a car, skipping across the Armco at Monaco all day long.
I know.
In or out of a white line is not gonna.
Just go back to cars that are close together and passing each other. I don't care that Perez went over the white line. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, it's just it's just mind numbing. What? Surely somebody could do that better.
Yeah. It's like Grace's love for basketball. You know, does she's like in the highlight reel? Do they show it when the guy actually steps out of bounds or when they slam dunk something?
Yeah, right.
I think we know the answer to that, right? So
yeah, show me reviews of every double dribble penalty called. I don't care. You know, yeah, it's just mind numbing. So anyway, well, let's jump into the race and start talking about it. But anyway, like I said, folks, I'm not trying to marginalize the onus as being on Pirelli to provide a durable tire. I get it. Yes, last minute changes. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy at all. And yet, social media is ripe with all these people saying, wow, that was fun. We should mandate 3 stops at least for every race. And it's like,
knew that was coming, right?
This is how we got high degradation tires. We had that debacle in Canada, and everybody thought, wow, rapidly degrading tires, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Now we're here, right? So, yeah, let's not. If you want more pit stops, just bring back refueling, all right? And then you could get more pit stops, because if you want to see crap get really chaotic, bring back refueling, right? that you know, you get Massa dragging the refueling rig down Singapore. You know, things get really crazy.
It's a highlight reel.
It is a highlight reel, you know. Get that hose whipping people in the paddock. You know, that's great. That's fun. Look good on Drive Just Fine. Okay, so, and there's nothing to do about the heat. Yes, there is. They cannot race in October. They can make it September. Okay. Paul, have you ever seen drivers in IMSA get hot in September races? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Many times. Most of the time.
Yeah. Say, well, why do they do Spa in the rain season? I don't know. It's a microclimate. It could rain anytime.
It's always rainy season.
It always rains at Le Mans. Anyway, all right, let's talk about Red Bull, shall we? So big congratulations to Red Bull, Oracle Red Bull Racing on their 3rd championship constructors, and big congratulations to Max Verstappen for his 3rd Drivers' Championship. Secured that on Saturday, which I thought is just great. That's like them rubbing F1's nose into their fun little sprint race thing. You know, couldn't win on a Grand Prix, you know, when everybody's coming, and the night and the lights and the fireworks and all the pomp and circumstance. It was a muted affair on Saturday in a throwaway sprint race.
They don't have a podium, right?
Yeah.
On the sprint race.
Yeah. Here's your medal.
On the sprint. Sorry,
Thank
it's not a race.
Yeah,
although
it's
you
a
get points
sprint.
for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here's your medal. Thank you. What's that say there?
Get your picture.
Okay. Get your picture with
walk through the gift
MBS.
shop on your way out. Yeah.
Yeah. Stand next to Eddie everywhere, and here's Stefano, and then thank you. I mean, what a damn squib. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, okay, it's muted. And then they go out Saturday night, they can't really have all the party and revelry, right? And they got to wait till Sunday. Yeah.
That's right. What did Max say about it? He's getting a little sweaty.
Yeah, right.
Maybe he did have a party Saturday night.
Maybe he did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Spiked
so anyway.
Perez's drink, apparently.
Yeah. Whoa, I'm dizzy. What's going on, man? So anyway, Max led from pole position on Sunday, took the win, just under 5 seconds over Oscar Piastri, though, and Lando Norris, so wasn't like he dominated with 30 seconds between them. Having secured his 3rd championship on Sunday, he ended the weekend with a win, but said that the mandatory stops prevented him from getting the most out of his tires.
Mm-hmm.
And that their car, he said, was designed for the tires on hand. Now, the implication there, Paul, to me is that when you discount the long run wear rates that car experiences with the current tires via this 18-lap maximum, the car doesn't actually deploy its ultimate pace over the life of the current tire compounds compared to other teams. So therein lies the thing that the genius of all the teams, to be fair, but Red Bull in particular, is that managing and running the tires as long as they want to run those tires, given how the other teams work their tires, this is a clear advantage to the Red Bull.
Yeah.
And because
absolutely.
they couldn't run the long runs, it negated the clear advantage Red Bull had, meaning he only finished 4.5 seconds ahead of Oscar.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the other teams have to nurse their tires a little bit to make the blast the leg that they need to. So there is where the pace starts to extend itself. So absolutely a big telltale there.
A big telltale sign there. So if you're nerding out on Red Bull's dominance, it's there, right? So anyway, I thought that was an interesting comment he made, and then they kind of glanced over, and I was waiting to see Adrian Newey kind of like, nah, don't say that. But anyway, I'm sure the other teams know that already. But anyway, so it meant that the McLarens were much closer. Not sure, but we'll see in Austin, I guess, how close they are. But anyway, what can you say? I get some people tell me, oh my gosh, it's boring, and Max is going to win everything. And thinking, well, this is only 3 seasons. I've made the argument 1,000 times. Where were you in the last 8 years with Mercedes? Nobody was complaining then. But anyway, all in all, Paul, you got to say, Max apart, just for a moment, what Red Bull is, and this is coming from a Ferrari fan, I'm elated for him because they toppled Mercedes.
Right.
That's what we wait for.
Unachievable just a couple of years ago. Right?
That's right. Yeah. It seemed like nobody would touch Mercedes, right? But Red Bull did it, right? And it's what Red Bull did to Mercedes did to Red Bull with Vettel in 2014, right?
Right.
And everybody's like, "Whoa, that's awesome!" These are the big moments. It's not a every given Sunday. It's watching these teams ebb and flow and dethrone each other. This is the fun of Formula One, and
underneath the surface.
Magic. And there's so a huge, heartfelt congratulations coming from a Ferrari fan to Red Bull, all the men and women who have worked their backside off at that team to produce the car they produced and to execute the program they've executed this year. So for all of you men and women who work for Red Bull, congratulations. You guys really deserve it. And when it comes down to Max, Paul, it's very much the same argument that they would make about Lewis. Valtteri's in the same car, not doing what Lewis is doing.
Right.
Perez is in the same car. He's not doing what Max is doing. Max is no, not even close. Max has just been sublime in his development in his racecraft. It's just, and you're a driver, Paul. He's doing a great job.
Yeah. It's his time. It's his time. Perfect match of driver skill, and the team building the car around him, and they've matched it perfectly, and they're getting everything they can out of it every week. And it looks easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's
not even
easy.
close.
Yeah. No, there's nothing easy about what he's doing.
No.
Nothing easy with what Mercedes, Lewis, and Nico were doing either. It's very difficult to do that, to perform at that level. A lot of people, when Lewis was winning, 7 titles and all the titles there he had with Mercedes. And I remember one of the things that I was always interested in the interviews when they'd ask him this, to kind of hear what Lewis's comments were. How do you keep that level of performance going?
Right.
At that level, this is Max's 3rd championship. How do you keep the motivation to keep winning, to keep driving yourself at that level? Remember, Nico Rosberg said it cost him nearly everything to beat Lewis that 1 year, and he said, "I'm not willing to do that every year." And he retired. It's an amazing feat what he's doing, and it was a great race for him. Perez started from pit lane due to the crash he had on Saturday. Wasn't necessarily his fault. Made progress up the field, but a few track limit penalties, Paul. which we saw in detail in slow-mo.
Yes.
He had a few of those, including a post-race penalty that dropped him down a spot to P10. The teams, I'll tell you, the telling sign for me, Paul, was that team radio message to him that said, hey, these track limit penalties are really hurting our race.
just a wee bit.
Ooh, that stung.
Yeah, there's something going on there.
It was like, Sergio, we're trying to finish 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship. What you're doing right now is hurting our ability to do that.
Right. And it's his position, right? Max has already sealed up. His team's already got theirs. This is should be all about Sergio getting out. Max is not going to give up a win to Sergio to do it, obviously.
Yep.
But yeah, Sergio's just, he's lost the plot, and
Is it all here, Paul?
Oh, for sure it is, because the car's there, and he has sometimes flourished, right? It's not like the car's a wicked beast that only Max Verstappen could solve the puzzle to. I think the team support, I think, what was it? Was it Brazil? Whatever, when Max wouldn't let Sergio by, and Sergio's recounting the Monaco thing. And I just think whatever they show outwardly, I think there's other stuff been going on internally, and I think it's gradually eaten away at Perez and his confidence. He likes to be, when he with Force India, he was the guy that saved Force India. He likes to be the guy that can. He's not that guy, and I think he's having an uncomfortable time being a number two, an obvious number two, and just being a supporting cast member. He had, maybe you could call it delusions of grandeur, but you're a racing driver. You've spent your whole life to be a world champion. At the beginning of the year, he was thinking he might stand a shot, but steadily it became glaringly obvious that was never going to happen, and Max Verstappen is on a different level to him. And the team support goes with Max. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
and Sergio hasn't figured out a way of getting over that issue and just getting on with the job and doing the best he can and get the best out of himself, even though he's not going to win world championships with Red Bull, and he's not going to beat Max Verstappen. I think it's absolutely all mental, and I don't think the team are really helping that anymore. Helmut Marko never helps people mentally, I don't think. So he's not going to go back, give someone a hug, and give them a nice, good, inspirational speech. He's going to say, "Drive faster or get out." And I got a feeling. Does Perez have a? He's got another year in his contract, but contracts are whatever. But I can't imagine Red Bull sticking with the Perez we have right now, knowing the driver pairings that they're going against, and them seeing some of these teams, especially McLaren, get edging closer and closer.
Yeah,
they need support. They need support right behind Max's rear wing, and they're not getting it from Sergio, and they're going to need it in the very near future.
Right. Makes you wonder if they wouldn't take the option with Liam.
Yeah, I don't think Liam would go to Red Bull. I don't think anyone at the AlphaTauri team is actually ready or capable of backing up Max at this point. I mean, I'd lead more to Alex Albon. Yeah. I mean, he's been there. He really didn't do a horrible job. They
didn't.
Jettisoned him too early, I believe, because they're not very patient. But he's matured a lot. He's a lot better driver than he was when he was there, and he was fast when he was there. But now he knows a lot more too. I think he would be a great choice, and also he would be eager because he's in a car that can never win a race right now.
Yeah,
it'd be hard to get someone who's driving a McLaren or a Ferrari to jump ship and know they're going to be second gunner to Max Verstappen, because they're potentially in a team that could turn it around, start winning races again. But for Albon, he's got a limited options for being at the sharp end, and I think that would be the prime one, and I think he'd jump on it if it was offered to him.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good move for him, for sure. Let's see. Let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris P3, Oscar Piastri in P2. After winning the sprint race, Paul, on Saturday with Lando in third, they managed the same thing. Another great performance on Sunday. Piastri in second place, Lando in third for the Grand Prix. Oscar had the measure of Lando kind of all weekend, I think, with his sprint win. Then the pace on Sunday, not only was able to keep Lando behind him, but also kept Max honest. Just finished a little under 5 seconds behind him, which was great. Oscar was absolutely, positively knackered after the race, Paul. I mean, he could barely stand, and no offense. I mean, a lot of the drivers are that way.
Right.
Yeah, he said that was the hardest race of his life to get in that. But what a great weekend for Oscar. He just, he's a pretty quiet guy. I sense he's kind of an introvert, may not have a lot of buddies up and down that paddock.
Yeah.
I think that can come off as a little aloof. I don't know that he is. I just think he just seems like the personality that's there not to make friends. He's there to win championships.
Yes.
And I can appreciate that. But, what a great weekend he's had.
Oh man, tremendous. But I mean, the fight for Piastri was still a fight for potential, between him and the Renault Alpine team. And Zach was right to fight for him hard and make it happen, right? And the McLaren team have done an amazing job in turning around. One of the best turnarounds in Formula One I've ever seen. In the difficult procedure of how Formula One is built nowadays.
Right.
30 years ago, maybe not so much. But because of all the limitations on testing and now the budget caps, so hard to do something major to change things around, and they seem to have the confidence to do it, and they did it, and the drivers are definitely a good pairing to do that.
Right.
Yeah, we don't see the buddy thing with Norris, but Piastri is out to win his own championship, not to be Norris's buddy. Pretty obvious there. I think he still needs a maturity. He's still a young guy. Remember, I said, photo with him and his girlfriend. I'm like, they look like they're 12.
I know.
And it's like, he's got maturing to do in how to wrap a team around him, obviously still. But Mark Webber's in the background there, I'm sure, helping and learning from Mark's mistakes on not being able to do that when he was in Formula One.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you needed a coach how not to get stuffed into a number 2 position, Mark would be a good guy.
Yeah,
because that happened to him, and he's got some some wise characters behind him. I don't think he has any interest in having the Carlando, even the Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Lando kind of ha fun.
Yeah.
He's not there for that. And I respect that. That's that tiger instinct is what I loved about the champions, whether it be Vettel or Hamilton or Max or Schumacher, pick one. They all have that just absolute tiger instinct in them, and they don't care. They're there to win.
Not that Lando doesn't. You hear a few sharp words from him occasionally.
Yeah, he does.
To kind of, as you like to say, have his feet on the desk and just reaffirm where they are. I'm obviously a lot faster than him.
Right.
The discussions.
Right.
We know you are, Lando. It's
right.
My. He's making sure no one forgets he's who he is, and he's there,
Yeah.
Funny stuff. It's going to be interesting to see how these relationships between all these young drivers get as we go along.
Yeah, I agree. For Lando, he dropped down to 6 on the opening lap, avoiding the Mercedes debacle, and then made his way back forward and was hunting down Oscar when the team radioed that hold station, as you mentioned, which he didn't really agree with. He said, "Really? Are you sure about that?" Yeah. Lando said that the three-stopper made it more physical, as you could push flat out, but admitted that, he was magnanimous. He admitted Oscar had a great race, great weekend, good result for the team. It was McLaren's 500th podium, Paul, in F1. And to top that off, the cherry on the top was they broke the record. They set an amazing 1.8-second pit stop, which was incredible.
That is a crazy, because they changed the rules, right? Because of all the wheel nuts falling off, so they had to do extra safety checks, and somehow they've now gone under that, even with those rules being in place. So that's an incredible pit stop.
Yeah. Great result for McLaren. Great weekend. It's great to see them doing so well. And kudos again to all the men and women Woking for turning their season completely around. It's just a fabulous job. That in Formula One, as you said, Paul, is just unbelievable. To do that is no easy task. So kudos to every person working for McLaren. Great job. Let's talk about Mercedes.
Get down.
You had Lewis Hamilton at DNF, George Russell in P4. This was probably a case of what might have been for Mercedes, Paul.
Yeah.
George looked on it all weekend. Lewis he's a little bit on the back foot, as I mentioned at the top of this podcast, with the tires given that 18-lap rule. He had more used sets, so he didn't have the options that maybe George and other drivers had. This prompted him to start on the softs in order to get the jump on the field at the start, which he did. He had a great start. Unfortunately, he turned in on George, sandwiching Russell, his teammate, causing a collision, and that spun Lewis out of the race first lap. George had to box for tire damage. That put him at the back of the field. Lewis took, later he was, he had said, taken out by my own teammate. And then George started feeling bad, thinking it was his fault. But ultimately, Lewis saw the replay, held his hand up, said, that's 100% my fault. He took the blame for that, went and apologized to George, said that was my bad. And that's a shame, Paul, because well, let's talk about the incident. I'm assuming you saw that as Lewis's fault. Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You got, much like, you just got to foresee what's going to happen in the future. And you didn't give, Russell had no options, but he couldn't disappear. So Lewis just got a little boisterous, I think a little too desperate maybe because of that tire situation, knowing what he really needed to achieve as quickly as he could. Yeah. And maybe obviously force something that wasn't actually there. So which is, we haven't seen him do that too often recently. He has had a history in the past as other drivers, but he's not done silly things like that for a while. So I think bit of desperation, just with the change of rules and how it put him on his back feet for the race, really.
Yeah, agreed. It's unfortunate because based on George's recovery drive from the back of the grid to P4, Paul, a very spirited drive from George. He had that altercation. He kind of felt bad at first. He was upset at Lewis, and then he was coming on saying, "Oh man, I saw it on the replay. I'm really sorry, guys." Maybe felt that it was him, and finally Toto came on and said, "George, that drive," Yeah, just drive. And so then he got the bit between his teeth, man, and he drove. What a great race he did. Very spirited. It's unfortunate because there may have been, in my mind, a real possible podium finishes for one, if not both of them, had they both, managed to get through turn one. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Lewis also was fined. He walked across, and he got a reprimand. He walked across a live track, which you cannot do in Formula One. So at the end, so unfortunate. I don't know if there's anything untoward. I think it was an unforced error from Hamilton. I think you're right. Feeling the pressure, knowing he's on his back foot with tire selection, what he had to try to achieve in that soft compound in very limited time. It's just an error on his part.
Just an error. And it is a shame because I think knowing where Red Bull were in this situation, not being able to really use everything of their usual unfair advantage, you like to call it, they may have taken something to him. They may have.
Yeah, they may have. But a great drive from George.
Oh yeah, it was a great drive by him, and great strategy. The team got him out of it, but he made some quick moves, got rid of the real slow guys very, very soon, and that really helped him set the stage and the team to run a strategy. It was like he just kept moving up the order, and I think it was very impressive to get to full from where he was. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about Ferrari, Charles Leclerc in P5. Carlos Sainz did not start. This is a brutal weekend for Carlos as he didn't start the race due to a fuel leak, which they only discovered before the race and didn't have enough time to fix it. That's a real shame, Paul, given his form since really the summer break. He's really been doing well, and to not start just sucked.
Yeah, that did. That's happened to us before, and the fuel cells are so deep into the cars. I mean, that's hours and hours of work to do a swap like that. There's no way they were going to even try to attempt it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. On the flip side, given the heat and dehydration, maybe Carlos thought this is, if I had to miss a race, this was probably the one to miss.
My hair still looks good. I don't know what these guys.
Yeah, right. I'm not. I'm barely perspiring over here. So that was good. Anyway, for Charles, he said, look, I feel like we maximized the car's potential today. Couldn't hold the Mercedes behind him, but he did manage to get Alonso stuffed behind him. Came in at P5. He said it was the toughest race race of his career. You're going to hear that a lot in these in this podcast because a lot of drivers said that. Nothing to write home about for Charles, but I think that probably was the max for the car.
Probably was, yeah. A little unfortunate they didn't really show up with anything to excite the Ferrari fans with, for sure, and the McLaren and the Mercedes for sure were head and shoulders above where the Ferrari was. So yeah, he did maximize it. It just wasn't impressive maximum pace for that car.
Yeah, no doubt. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll down in P11, Fernando Alonso P6. Alonso ran wide early on, which is not necessarily something you normally see from him anyway. I thought that was a little odd. He said it was just hashtag just the win, so that would make Grace happy.
Yeah,
right? Just the win. So that's good. He also was struggling with a very hot seat, wanted water poured over him during the stop, which you can't do. But despite that ragged race from him, he did manage to come home sixth, put in a decent race. But with both McLarens ahead of him, Paul, the team lost ground on the Constructors' Championship, so that wasn't good. He didn't have his teammate there with him in order to try to maximize. So didn't have it. But anyway, a bit of a pokey, a bit of a chippy race from Fernando, but he still brought it home in sixth.
It was, surprisingly. He went off twice, I think, right? He went stripped to gravel as well. And lost him. Did he get a
came
penalty?
back on track?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
They never gave him a penalty for that, which I was very surprised.
I was surprised too.
Very surprised. In any series I've ever run in, that would be a penalty.
They were busy giving penalties for track limit violations.
Yeah, they were too busy mesmerized by the slow-mos and the white lines.
Let's watch that track limit violation again.
But so that was surprising. But I think for the mistakes he made, it was actually a really good finish.
I did too.
But did he get a track limits penalty at all, or just those offs? For some reason, I thought he was on the cusp of it, maybe, and never got it.
He may have. Yeah, I don't know if he got a penalty. In memory, I can't remember. Apologies if he did, and I'm not remembering. I think he did get warnings, but I don't know if he actually got to the penalty.
Stop it! I'll say stop it again. But so I think the finish position was really good for what actually happened in that race. As you say, it was a bit of a negative a race by his standards, by all the mistakes. But it's all to do with, once again, trying to force something that isn't really there. And Fernando keeps going. Sometimes gets results out of bad stuff. But yeah.
Speaking of track limit violations and penalties, his teammate did get those, though. Lance made his way up the field, but had too many track limit penalties, which dropped him down to P11. Lance said, post-race, Paul, he was passing out in the car.
Yeah,
in the corners.
I think you should stop at that point. I mean, how?
Thinking. I mean, if he... was he saying that he was dizzy, he felt lightheaded, then that's one thing. But I was passing out. I was like, dude... If you're passing out in the corner, you need to park up.
I can't believe that, because you pass out in a car going that fast. You literally, you go places that you'd never even dream of going. But maybe he was not feeling it. Maybe being a bit over dramatic. But
if you pass out, you're in the wall. At that speed, you're in the wall.
Yeah, you're flying off somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that you can't drive a Formula One car, and briefly pass out. That doesn't happen.
No,
because you would be. I mean, you're going so fast; it's fractions of seconds.
Right. Right.
In a fraction of a second, you're off the track and in the wall. Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, but he had a ragged weekend too. Shoving his physio. Mm-hmm. It was weird. I sent you that video as soon as it happened. This guy's like, "Oh, he hit a wall," and I was like, "Hit a wall? He hit his teammate, his team member." He didn't hit a wall. Look at the video.
His legs were flying in the air.
Yeah, come on. That was obvious. He shoved the dude, So, that was not a good look. Very frustrated young man, Paul.
Very frustrated.
Yeah.
And understand, you would be frustrated.
You would.
Having that big gap, just like Perez is
he and Perez need to talk it out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the fix is, because, he couldn't make the most of it when the car was at its optimum. Potential race winner a couple of times.
Yep.
And now Fernando's doing the best he can, which is sixth,
P6.
seventh, maybe.
Yep.
He's there's no opportunity to get into points anymore, and that's got to be frustrating, because the team is gradually falling down, and McLaren are taking their position, right?
Yep.
Did they? I think they're ahead now, McLaren, right?
I don't think they're ahead yet.
Really? Wow.
Mm-mm. They're close.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're close. Let's see. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, P12, Esteban Ocon, and P7. Both cars were in the points for most of the race, Paul, but Pierre had that ERS issue, and that was impacting his pace. It slowed his pace, so then he basically was trying to correct for that, and then he was having track limit issues.
Right.
And he got penalties that dropped him down to P12. Hands up, he said, look, hey, the track limit's on me. I was trying way too hard to overcompensate for the lack of pace I was having because of the ERS issue, and that's on me. But he did, he ran wide. He passed Perez and Stroll, but he ran wide doing it, so he had to give those places back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Which is unfortunate, really, because he didn't need to even use all that road with the passes he made. But and I do understand he was down power and he was trying to make it up by taking more momentum through the corners, and it caught him out.
Yeah. Kind of felt like he could have made an argument that, well, I ran, and they weren't like he went way off track and cut a corner and made the pass. He just slightly went over. I kind of felt like he should have went to the stewards and made the case that, hey, I was trying to give him plenty of room, because this is tough out there. But anyway.
Yeah.
Down in P12, Esteban also said this was a very tough race. Managed to stay in the points for P7 despite throwing up in his helmet on lap 15. Ooh.
That's not something you want to keep driving around with.
No.
Oh my God.
If you're driving around in a helmet chasing an errant shrimp around, they had earlier or something. It's like, this isn't good. Open that visor, try to get gravity to get that thing out, It's terrible.
That's nasty.
That's not good, Esteban. I'm sorry you had
for
to
him
deal with that.
Go through that and have to deal with that for the whole race and still get points, that was pretty strong.
Have you ever thrown up in your helmet, Paul?
No.
Come close?
No.
You're made of harder stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you'd think, I don't know, some of my friends, when we're doing our instructor life and going on skid pads and things like that, it's never really affected me. Some other people I know that they're like ready to barf after like one spin or something. But
right.
It's all that Indian food. See, it gives me this iron stomach. So,
yes, that's why you're Captain Vindaloo.
Yes, that's why I'm Captain Vindaloo.
That's it. Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas, P8, Zhou Guanyu, P9. A great result from these guys, Paul. If you needed a feel-good story of the weekend, this has got to be it. Both the Alphas were in the points. That moved them, folks, ahead of Haas in the Constructors' Championship. That, folks, was a $10 million weekend for this team. Big money in making those positions up. So when you talk about the season's done, I know, but there's still millions and millions of dollars to play for from 2nd through 10th.
Oh, yeah.
And
I don't know how close it is, but Haas is the only real chance they have is during those sprints. So is there more sprints coming up? Is one in Brazil?
In Austin.
Austin as well?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, Haas might be able to clamber it back because obviously their deficit is in their tire wear program. But which this should have done them better. But great for Alpha there, because they've just been nothing. They've been kind of a damp squib.
They have
most of the season.
Bottas, he had a good qualifying. Made the best use of that. Stayed up front on the softs. Boxed early. Stayed in the points. Only lost out to Ocon in the end. So a great run from him. And then from Joe's standpoint, Paul, he was yo-yoing all over the place.
He was in the wars, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was in amongst it, right? Boxed late, out of sync with everyone else. And then managed to pass Stroll on the last lap to get P10, inherited P9 with Perez's penalties. So a great run for Joe, too. I
think I said, they haven't had anything great to celebrate, but they probably were celebrating those points, I'd say, on Sunday night, because it's been few and far between for those guys.
Yeah, and in such an oppressive heat and a tough race, so good for both of them.
Yep.
Let's see, we are down. Are we down to Williams? We are. Williams, Alex Albon, P13, Logan Sargentini. Oh, man, poor Logan again. Just like Esteban. He was ill, apparently, earlier in the week. And because of that, you can imagine just coming off an illness. Are you kidding me? And then
Right.
get into this, instantly dehydrated him, started vomiting. I loved his spirit. He wanted to hang in there. Even the team saying, "No, if you're feeling bad, box." He's like, "No, I promise." He's trying everything he can to get to the end.
Yeah.
And finally, James Vowles is on the radio saying, "Look, I'm responsible for your health too, Tiger. And if
Yeah.
you're feeling bad, you need to box, right?"
Right. Right.
And ultimately, he tried, couldn't hang in there, got out, and I feel bad for him. He's okay though, just severe dehydration. So, ends his race. Conversely, Alex Albon still they had to help him out of the car.
Yeah.
He was worn out. Said that the cockpit was way overheating. Very tough race. Suffered from the heat exposure himself. It's interesting. I heard two people. It's like on Friday's like, "Oh, yeah, it's just a tough race, not your weekend, James. How do you treat this? Just kind of a test session for you?" James like, "No, you never give up fighting. They scored
That's
points
right.
in the sprint race,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah. And they
So-
could have said, yeah, Albon.
Yeah.
They were actually like in the top 10 a little bit in this race too.
They
but-
were. Alex was. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. And Sargent was right behind him at some point.
Yeah, he was in
but
11th. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I love James. I love this guy. I love the way he's approaching
too.
this team.
Yeah. He's a sensible chap
He is. He's a great
with
guy.
with a very big brain.
Very big brain. Very smart guy. He's turning this team around. I love this team. Love what James is doing to this team. You got to be rooting for this team, And everybody's, dump Logan. And James came out and said, we really would like to have Logan here next year. And just, whether that's true or not, he's a good guy. He's a good egg and a smart cookie. And I like that team. Love James and what he's doing. Down to Haas, Nico Hulkenberg, P16, Magnussen, P14. Nico lined up in Carlos's empty spot, Paul. And so knew it immediately right when he stopped. And
Yeah,
he
he's
can't
looking
back
around.
up.
Going,
He's
is
like,
anyone looking at me?
like, oh, crap, I'm in the
I
wrong
don't know
spot.
those guys.
What am I doing here? What was I thinking?
I'm in the wrong
right?
room.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah. What am I doing? You can't back up on the grid. He knew it, got a 10-second penalty, dropped him out of the points. It's a shame because I think he could have nipped a point.
Yeah.
There. He was running really well this weekend, but after drop down the field, it was really going to be hard for him to recover. He felt bad about it. He knew it, and that was a bummer. And Kevin, very frustrated, on the radio. I don't understand. He was mad. He said
settings they were giving him on the car.
Yeah, I don't understand. What? What am I doing? What?
Why? Well, I think he knew what it did. I think he understood that they were basically calling the race off and turning the engine down, and he was like, "Why are we doing that?" But
he was not happy. Very frustrated. Said it was one of the hardest races. He struggled with tire wear. Didn't have the pace. Very frustrated. They slipped down a spot in the constructors due to Alpha's double points finish. That hurts, especially for a team like this. Gene's sitting at home. He's then calling up Gunther.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough.
Not good.
Damn, I should have sold to Andretti.
I should have sold to Andretti. There was my window of opportunity. Damn it.
Yeah.
Is there any Middle East group that wants to buy a team? Oh, Gene. Anyway,
Plenty.
and now we're down to AlphaTauri. How about this, Paul? Liam Lawson, P17, Yuki Tsunoda, P15. If this is Liam's last race, it was not a good one for him.
Oh.
He said he had no speed. Said that he was managing stability issues almost the entire race in the car. Was not good. But then they interviewed Franz Tost on the grid, and he said that Daniel was doing sim work this week and still wasn't able to complete a full race. So I would think that the jury's out about whether Daniel's going to be ready for Austin or not. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure Daniel wants to go to Austin. He loves that place. He loves America and all that kind of good stuff. But when you're on a simulator, it's very different when you're in a race. And you've got your adrenaline running, and I'm sure he could. Well, I don't know. I mean, if it was like 10 laps and he was done, then no. But it would be a bit different in real life. But how do the team make that decision? Because they don't want Liam. If Liam's going to be in, they need him in from practice one, right, to get the most out of that car.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they do want Danny in there because they're lost in the championship.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
It's brutal.
The sister team to the team that's dominating.
I know.
The past 3 years at this point, and they don't have enough bleed down technology to get that car to not be the worst. That's crazy to me.
It's crazy. And it's probably why Franz is on his way out and Lauren Neckes is in, and they're changing the name. And they say next year, they are going to take that bleed down knowledge base and wisdom from Red Bull. They need to.
Experiment of over, right? Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inexcusable that the deficit is that much between those two teams.
Yeah, for sure. And Yuki said the car actually felt good. The balance was good. They said we're just way too slow. Couldn't make up any ground. So there you have it. That's the teams. We always hand out awards at the end of this podcast. Let's do that. Yeah. The first award is Move of the Race. All right, Paul, Move of the Race. Who'd you have?
I'm going to George Russell for his multiple turn 6 pass maneuvers. I thought that was great.
He passed everybody there.
He passed everyone there. He obviously figured it out and said, "Okay, this is my setup." He made it work once and just kept repeating. So it was a great job to figure that out. There's some other good passes around there that turn 1. Norris, some of those outside passes in the 1 was good.
That's the one I liked, was Norris on the outside in turn 1. I thought that was good.
I was telling you before the part, there must be something in how that camber works for that move to come off, right? Because normally that just wouldn't be on, but they've done something well in the design of the track that actually allows that to happen. So that's fun. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, it really was. It was great passing. I loved it too. Let's see. Next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it live.
Oh yeah, Paul.
Well,
I think we both had the same here.
Yeah, I got a long toilet paper roll of donkeys for this race, but I've narrowed it down. I'll let you go ahead.
Well, I had the tires. Tires. Yeah, that was bad.
The tires, or was it the curbs, or was it the heat? I don't know, but it was
all three.
All three added to, difficult weekend for everybody.
Yeah. It was easy to cancel Emilia Romagna because of the flooding, but you wonder if this, if there's a heat and it's getting so hot that the drivers literally can't get out of the cars. You got to think about that.
Right. It's just easy. Visually, it doesn't.
You can't see it.
It doesn't. When you're away, you can't see the heat, right? So difficult to do that.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right, and then finally is Drive the Race.
Get down. Get down.
All right, Paul. Drive the Race. Who'd you have?
Yeah. Get on with it, George Russell, and he did.
Oh yeah, he did. Boy, did he!
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, great race.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought
great passes, great pace, great strategy by the team.
Yeah.
Great result from where he ended up at lap 1. So terrific.
Yeah. He could have thrown it away, could have done a lot of things. But boy, what a drive back for George. I thought it was great. I'm going to give it to Oscar. I think he had, on balance, a fantastic weekend all the way around. I thought sprint race, the sprint for him, win, fantastic job, great qualifying. Well, the qualifying wasn't that great for both he and Lando. They kind of got hung out, but to recover on the sprint and then to recover in the race to come up to second, fantastic. Held off Lando, was not easy, kept Max honest. Great weekend for him. Let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Got some mail. Steve asked this, Paul. He says, hi there. This point may have been... Hello, Steve. Hi, Steve. Thanks for your question. I really appreciate it. He says, hi there. This point may have been answered by the time I listened to the Qatar Grand Prix race review. It won't. No. Did we answer this? Well, we sort of did, Steve. We sort of did. But I'm going to reiterate it here. He said, but why are these pyramid curbs used when track limits are policed so vigorously? Seems to me like they're not suitable and should be replaced. He brings up a good point, Paul. If you're going to be handing out track limit violations for going a millimeter over, then why use those curbs there? Why not just have some more normal little rumble strips and just call the penalties and then show a slow-mo replays?
I think they're still trying to figure out a way of making it work without track limits. I mean, I think they overuse them anyway, but I also think they understand that track limits aren't necessarily the best thing for Formula One either. So I think they're steadily trying different things. And as I said before, Lewis was like, "Oh, these are great. We don't we shouldn't need track limits violations this weekend because the curbs work in a perfect manner, but they obviously didn't work in a perfect manner for Pirelli's sidewalls, and evidently anyway.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, good point. I think you're making a point of this stupid track limit things. If you're going to be so, militant about calling those, then why put curbs anywhere? Just start handing out track limit violations like it's candy. Yep, I agree with you. Next up is Manolo asked this. Hi, Todd. Paul, love the show. Been a long time listener. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Most people can't stomach us for that long, and I'm grateful you can, Manolo. So thanks for doing that. We're only occasionally insightful. And
Very occasionally.
most people think we need to mix it up. There's a lot of other cool, fun, more interesting podcasts. So thanks for
Really?
listening. Oh yeah,
So I should start
hear it all.
juggling and stuff.
Yeah, maybe I should start, wearing a wig, or should I
I could
wear
do
something fun? Should I vomit in my helmet? What do you want me to do? You know?
No, because I don't want to see that shrimp thing
Yeah.
or listen about it ever
Little shrimp going back.
again. Yeah.
Hey, it was in your Vindaloo. What were you supposed to do? I don't know, man. If everything we're doing is getting old and nobody likes it, then I apologize. But this is kind of who we are. So anyway, he says, so after the race, all the pundits and podcasters were all mentioning how unusual it was to see Lewis Hamilton make such a mistake, and that he is so good in wheel-to-wheel combat. Have all of them forgotten about the incidents from not long ago? And here's his list. Piastri, Monza 2023, Alonso, Spa 2022, Verstappen, Brazil 2022, Verstappen, Monza 2021, Verstappen, Silverstone 2021, Albon, Austria 2020, Albon, Brazil 2019, Rosberg, Barcelona 2016. These are just some that I could think of, but I think it's already quite a lot of drivers for a driver Lewis's stature. What are your thoughts on this?
Mm. Well, I mean, for a while there, and we were very vocal about it, he was making mistakes like this all the time, but he got ahead around it, and then obviously he ended up being 7-time world champion on the trot, right? But
Yep.
or 6-time champion on the trot. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you do forget some of these incidents. Sometimes those incidents weren't necessarily all his fault either. You know, I mean, the jury was out. I can't recall all these incidents. I think on the whole, he's improved himself a lot.
Yep.
And he doesn't, from where he was in his darkest hours, I would say, when he was desperate driving. But yeah, this was, I would say, an error out of sequence to how he's been performing over the past few years. I really do.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people said, Vettel couldn't drive wheel to wheel.
Yeah, well, we know that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that may be a little more difficult for him than Lewis. In fairness, Manolo, I think you could make a very similar list like this for Max.
Right.
Yeah, it took Max a little while to hone that racecraft. Now I think he's got it in spades now.
And it helps when you got the fastest car.
It
or
always
him
helps.
in the fastest car
Yeah.
touch. That does help make decisions easier.
Yeah, it always helps. I think the two recent ones, punting Albon twice was pretty weak. So other ones, Verstappen, Monza, you could argue that wasn't all his fault. I think you can go through the list, as Paul said. Has Lewis had altercations and struggled and hit other people and caused collisions? Sure, he has. Sure, he has. I think earlier in his career he was doing that, but I think all the drivers, that's part of getting that racecraft and honing that skill. As he got better and better, I think the pundits are right. He saw less and less of that. That's why the two Albon incidents kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
We didn't typically kind of expect that from Lewis, but it happens.
Yeah, and in truth, I mean, Lewis is he was third in championship. I don't know where he is, but he was the close. Well, no, he didn't get any
No, he
points.
is third. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, but he had the chance to, because Perez would have been off. He could have, but he hasn't had it was not like he's had a standout season, but he's
consistent.
He's consistently, he's just been scoring points and points and points. And for him to be in that position, I think is actually pretty impressive, considering he's in the third or fourth best car at some points in the season, or at least half the season. So I think he's actually done a pretty good job in keeping the car on the pavement and just eating points up. So
Yeah, I think you can make a similar list for a lot of the champions if you really kind of go back. You could look at Vettel, Multi-21, those kind of things. You could go back and piece some of those together. Max, you could certainly make a equal type of list like this.
My favorite, Schumacher on Damon Hill for the World Championship.
Yeah, and Schumacher on JV, right?
Yeah.
You could
anyway.
You could make a similar list with Schumacher, Senna, punting Prost deliberately. Yeah, you can make a similar list like this, Manolo. I appreciate your suggesting that for pundits to say, Lewis, this is really unusual, and he's had several altercations, and that's true. And so is Fernando, to be fair. I think Lewis manned up. He said, "Look, I watched it. My bad. Yeah, absolutely my fault." And he knew it. And I think that goes a long way to that point. I don't think he's the ragged driver that some may think he is. I think he's well beyond that with 7 titles. But I do think he's frustrated as hell. He wants that 8th title. He's not getting it. He went into this.
I think that 8th title in the back of his head 3 years ago is still eating him alive.
I think it eats him alive. And I think this weekend he knew he was on the back foot, had to make something happen with his stuff. I just think it's an unforced error, and it happens. Charles Leclerc, you could argue.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right? So, anyway, I appreciate the question, though, Manolo. It was a great question. So, anyway, all right, well, that's it. That's it for the podcast. That's what we think about this race. You let us know what you think about this race. Paul has a week off, and then he comes back for another triple header. So, you're going to have all the Paul you ever wanted from
Triple
Austin
header.
Onward. Yeah, from Austin onward.
Okay, so is Austin not next
Mexico,
weekend?
Brazil. No, it's not next weekend.
Okay,
we get to next
Petit
week.
Le Mans next week. That's my last
you
race
do.
of the year,
and that's a great race. I love that track.
So
anyway, but next week everybody gets to hear how happy Grace is because the McLaren and the Steelers won this weekend, so she'll be really happy and effervescent. Will Grace? So people get to hear that, but you'll be back for Austin. We'll be talking about the Austin Grand Prix. We'll be talking about the Austin not Grand Prix Sprint, Paul.
Right. We may
and
not
track
talk about
limits
it that much, though. Yeah.
Yeah, we probably won't talk about the sprint much. Think about that. So anyway, all right. Well, be sure to stop by the website, theparkfermé.com. Share your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility. As always, if you like the podcast, you can go to iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Give us a good rating. Give us a love over there. We'd appreciate it. And a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we could not and would not be able to do this podcast without you. And thank you for the patrons that, periodically I throw up a little discussion point. I threw one up today about the tires, and I love hearing our Patreon supporters. It's a little more intimate, right? We can kind of talk back and forth with each other, have a little conversation about it. So loved your points on the tires and heat and stuff. So big thank you to our Patreon supporters who kind of chime in on those, and I enjoy those. I hope you do too. And so next week we'll be back to do it all over again. Until that time, this is Todd, aka Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.